Hello, friend. It's not that you're not gorgeous. It's just, I think that I'd rather call you my friend. So, hello, friend. I need to hear this, and you probably need to hear this too. So, you are very powerful, and you are working very hard, and you're doing a good job. Welcome back to What You Water. I'm Miranda Waldeck, and this is episode 3 of our self-therapy series. Today, we are talking about processing our emotions. I did want to do some housekeeping before we got started. Firstly, I wanted to talk about the trigger warnings. In the last video, and most likely in this video, I put the trigger warnings at the beginning of the video in their abbreviated form with the timestamps where you can expect me to talk about it at full length. I then put the definition of the abbreviation. It was my intention to put it in the description of the video. I ended up putting it in the comment. This week it will be in the description of the video. I just wanted to kind of check in and see if that was okay with everybody. I know that the words themselves can be triggering, and so I didn't want to just put triggering words on screen to inform you that there was going to be a trigger warning. You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that just defeats the purpose. That's why I used the abbreviation, and then I was going to put the definition of it in the description. If that works for us, I would really appreciate it if we could comment. Just let me know that that's working for us. If that's not working for us, again, please let me know in the comments. Just if you have any suggestions, or if you know somebody else is doing it better, maybe you can like direct me to their video. I just want to make sure that I'm doing that in the safest way possible for our community. Secondly, it was brought to my attention that I need to talk about why I talk about journaling so much and what it is. I know that some people are going to know what it is, but for those who don't, I figured I could just explain it a little bit more. Journaling can be a therapeutic way to express emotions, organize feelings, and gain self-awareness. It can be a helpful tool in processing your emotions. And actually, one of the reasons I recommend it so much is because that's how I process my emotions. People often have a misconception about journaling that it needs to be like a paper or an essay, or it's got to be like your autobiography. That is not the case at all. This is your journal. Your journal is 100% your own. No one is going to read it but you. Or I should say, no one should read it without your permission. You can write whatever you want in it, and you can write however you want. There are many different ways to journal. You can do a stream of consciousness journaling where you set a timer for 5 to 20 minutes and you just write whatever pops into your head without stopping. If you're new to journaling, don't feel pressured to go all the way to 5 minutes at first, and definitely don't feel pressured to go all the way to 20 minutes. Maybe start with 1 minute. You know, it's a practice, and just like any other practice, it's going to take time to develop. People find this type of journaling very helpful when they have overwhelming emotions and just need a release. You can do a type of journaling where you ask yourself questions. What am I feeling? Or what are the thoughts behind my emotions? This type of journaling helps you delve into your inner self when you're just unsure of what you're feeling, and helps you figure yourself out a bit more through almost like an interview process. You can do a type of journaling method known as trigger exploration. If you went to an event or had an uncomfortable situation and a trigger popped up for you, you can journal through a play-by-play of what happened to try and identify what the trigger might have been. Then you can begin to break down where the trigger might have originated from and how to manage your response to it. You can also practice positive self-talk in your journal. After you've expressed your emotions, you can see the situation from a different perspective and validate yourself for what you did right and how you showed up. I also find journaling helpful with my depression and anxiety because it helps me keep track of my progress. When working with your mental illness and disorders, it's essential to keep track of your emotional state. If you keep a journal and you notice that for 5 days in a row that you've had some pretty dark entries, that's a pretty good indicator that it's time to either reach out to your support system, or it might be time to reach out to a therapist. On the flip side, if you keep a journal and your entries have been more positive, you've been kinder to yourself, you're more grateful, or you simply can't complain, then that's a great indicator that the work you're doing on yourself is working. You're going in the right direction. I wanted to read you a small snippet from my journal that made me kind of happy and is appropriate for us. I have been thinking about creating this channel for a very long time. And in April of this year, I was coming to the end of a pretty dark time in my life that had lasted for about 7 months. I was feeling very hopeless and like nothing would work out for me. I thought that I was just gonna have to give up on all of my dreams. Then one night, I just had this like really transformative night where I journaled for a couple of hours and I wrote 7 pages front and back, and ultimately I made a choice for myself. I need to make that vulnerable channel telling my story and creating the life I want for myself. If I'm being honest, I'm more passionate about that than I am about being a singer. I want to help people and provide a safe space for people so they don't end up feeling like because they have made mistakes, come from a place that doesn't foster a good future, or they just simply don't have the confidence or believe in themselves that they can't become who they want to be. I still want to perform and create my bed and breakfast. However, if nothing mattered and if I could do whatever I wanted, I would still want to help people. And now we're here. And I feel incredibly excited for the future. So that is journaling. This can be a great way to process your emotions, but there are other ways to process your emotions. I have a family member that processes their emotions by writing poetry. I know that there are some people who process their emotions through physical movement, but that's all I wanted to say before we got started. Let's go ahead and get into the video. Part 1. What does it mean to process your emotions? Emotional processing is the ability to identify, understand, and manage emotions. It involves steps that allow you to absorb and regulate your emotions. We discussed part of this process last week when we talked about identifying our emotions. Identifying your emotions is a huge part of processing your emotions, right? What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? Why am I feeling it? And what do I need? So the steps of emotional processing are as follows. Also, to kind of help understand these steps, I'm going to create a fake person and a fake scenario just to make it a bit more clear. Step 1 is sensation, so feeling the emotion. Before you begin analyzing, you feel. Where am I feeling the sensation in my body? So our example, Jeffrey feels discomfort in his upper body, mainly his chest and his upper back. He is also sore in his neck and he has a headache. Step 2, perception, recognizing the emotion. Now we ask ourselves, what am I feeling? Remember, if you are someone who is more connected to your emotions, or you can put words to your feelings first, then you would do this step first. If you are someone who is more connected to your body, then you would ask, where do I feel it in my body? Then you would ask, what am I feeling? And don't forget to use your feelings wheel if necessary. Jeffrey decides to take a minute for himself because the discomfort is letting him know that something is off. After a moment of reflection, Jeffrey recognizes that he is angry. Step 3. Comprehension. Understanding the emotion. Last week, when we talked about identifying our emotions, we discussed discovering the reason behind our feelings. We talked about looking at a specific trigger that might have occurred to understand why you're having the emotion at that moment. For example, Jeffrey continues his self-reflection and recognizes that today was particularly stressful for him because he lost his job due to layoffs. When processing our emotions, there is a deeper dive that you take to that step, which is comprehension. So you would take a step further and you would ask, why does this event, situation, or trigger affect me this way? This step requires you to be honest with yourself and look past the surface level explanations. For example, at first, Jeffrey told himself that he was just angry about getting laid off. But once he decided to be more honest with himself, the reasoning behind the emotions became clear to him. Jeffrey was angry that he lost his job, but he was angry that he lost his job because he didn't do anything wrong. He was stressed out because now there was the question of, where is the money going to come from to pay for my bills? And he was frustrated because he lost his source of income for reasons that had nothing to do with him. And finally, he feels helpless because there is nothing he can do to stop it from happening, and he just has to accept that he lost his job. Step 4, performance. Using the emotion to influence behaviors or outcomes. When we successfully process our emotions, we can allow them to influence our behaviors and decision making so that we don't end up in the same situation. Or if we do end up in the same situation, we know how to advocate for and take care of ourselves in a more informed way. Essentially, it helps us to be a better friend to ourselves. For example, Jeffrey took time to validate his emotions and seek comfort. He reached out to his support groups and his community. They supported Jeffrey and validated his experience. They also encouraged him to believe in himself and to see things from a different perspective. Jeffrey realized he didn't really like working for that company. Sure, it paid the bills, but the work wasn't fulfilling. Jeffrey decided that getting laid off was a painful experience and he didn't want to be in that position again. He also decided he wanted to do work that involved his passions and made him feel more fulfilled. So he took his time and began applying for jobs that met those requirements. Because Jeffrey allowed himself to feel, express, and understand his feelings, and then use that understanding to move forward, he could fully process his emotions and create a healthier and happier life for himself. He also gave himself the confidence of knowing how to take care of himself were this situation to arise again in the future. Part 2. What are the effects of unprocessed emotions? Unprocessed emotions can lead to negative self-talk, speaking to yourself in a way that is unkind and critical, avoidant behaviors such as procrastination, avoiding conflict or avoiding responsibility, and numbing, which could look like a variety of things. Mindlessly consuming TV or social media, overeating, overspending, or shopping for things that you don't need. Keeping yourself constantly busy and overworking yourself so you just don't have time for rest. Abusing substances like alcohol or drugs, and distracting yourself with a romantic relationship. I should say, if you can't be single or you can't spend time by yourself, that's where you know there's some numbing behaviors happening. Part 3. What are the benefits of processing your emotions? Emotional processing can improve mental health by promoting self-awareness, reducing stress, and enhancing emotional regulation. It can improve your relationships by allowing for clearer communication and creating a safe space to resolve conflicts, eventually allowing you to avoid them or work through them in a more healthy way. It can also improve relationships by allowing you to rely on self-regulation when appropriate. There are times when you lean on a partner for emotional regulation in a relationship, and that is called co-regulation. However, to have healthy co-regulation in a relationship, each partner needs to have healthy self-regulation. And learning to process your emotion is getting you that much closer to learning how to self-regulate. Processing your emotions can also benefit your physical health. A clear mind allows you to make better lifestyle choices. Also, processing your emotions can lower your cortisol levels. When we're stressed out and dealing with consistent anxiety, our cortisol levels shoot up, and that's not great for daily living and our long-term health. So there are many benefits to processing your emotions. Part 4. The discomfort of processing your emotions. I'm an extrovert and I love helping people. I'm a humanitarian. My favorite thing is bringing people together and making them feel peaceful. Whether that is through laughter, joy, safety, or comfort doesn't matter to me. As long as I'm helping and providing care, I'm happy. The human psyche and how it connects to our nervous system and how our nervous system connects with our emotions and how our emotions connect with our bodies fascinates me. I've always been curious about it. I did not grow up in a world that encouraged me to learn about it. I was born in 1994, and I don't feel like people close to me or people in society accepted mental health work as a viable option for care until I was in high school. And even then, there was a stigma and judgment placed around it. Like, if you had to go to therapy, people would whisper it. Like, oh, did you get to therapist? You know what I mean? I remember trying to talk to friends and my mom and family members just about things that my brain was going through or things that I didn't understand or was curious about. I didn't have the words, and it was considered an uncomfortable topic, especially when I started going through depression and suicidal ideation at 17 years old. Then I was sent to a therapist who, for whatever reason, was not very good at his job. You know, it could have been that he was working with outdated material, or it could have been that he just was the kind of person that shouldn't have been doing that job. Because that happens. That does happen. Sometimes people are like, you know what, I think I'll go into this because I'm interested in it. And it's like, just because you're interested in it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. That is my unprofessional, professional opinion. Whatever it was, it put me in a position where I ended up with more questions than answers. But I also now had a whole new set of words to try and define. I'm just a kid. My brain is fully still developing. I'm only 17 years old. I don't know what emotional processing is. I don't know what trauma storage is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. So at that point, I can't relate to my friends. I don't have the right words to explain to my mom. The therapist that I was sent to just doesn't seem like he's actually interested in helping me. All of these things, coupled with the childhood stuff that I had talked about a little bit last week, taught me that it wasn't safe to open up emotionally, and that I needed to push my feelings down because processing my emotions just wasn't an option. So I buried my feelings and I distracted myself from the negative. And then, thankfully, I found a therapist who was willing to help me. But then, once I did find a therapist who was willing to help me, I still resisted learning to process my emotions because pulling up those past experiences and going through that trauma scared me. It had been buried away, and I had been numbing myself to life for so long that I was terrified that my trauma had grown into something else. So I didn't want to face it. As I said before, I thankfully had a wonderfully patient therapist, and she not only explained to me that it's not possible for our trauma to have grown worse inside of us. The trauma will remain the exact same as it was when it happened. She was also willing to work through that trauma with me. That's not to say that the trauma wasn't still bad, because I don't want you to think that if you're sitting there thinking the same thing that I used to think, that your trauma that you've ignored for so long has grown into this like monster that you don't know how scary it's going to be, you don't know how long you're going to cry, you don't know how painful it's going to be to process your emotions. I'm not trying to tell you that your trauma is not going to be painful and that you're not going to experience discomfort by going through that. I'm just trying to tell you that what happened. That event is that event. It doesn't have the power to grow into something bigger because you don't process it immediately. It'll still be there, and it'll be the exact same thing it was when it happened when you're ready to process it. Just wanted to say that. But due to the way that people treated emotional expression when I was growing up, and because I had to go down a winding road of healing, it took me until the sweet tender age of 27 to start understanding what processing emotions and self-regulation were. Unfortunately, my story is one of many people's experience. It is very common for people to feel unaccepted, shamed, or unsupported, which causes them to shut down emotionally. Fortunately, mental, emotional, and spiritual health is much more accepted than ever before, and there is far more materials to help us on our journeys. So there is hope, and hopefully I can help you out too. All right, that's our episode this week. Okay, these first 3 episodes were our introduction to self-therapy. How do we feel? Are you still interested? Eh? I hope so. I really enjoyed making these because they help you begin to identify your inner self and work with yourself on an emotional level. As we keep going, there will be more episodes on the inner self, but these ones were really important to get started. Next week, we will discuss how to protect our peace and cultivate an environment that encourages us to keep doing this work and take good care of ourselves. Please give me any feedback you have about the trigger warnings and the journal prompts. Any information helps. And today's quote comes from Socrates. He says, "Care for your psyche. Know thyself. For once we know ourselves, we may learn to take care of ourselves." See you next week.